Tonight, there's a lot of excitement in the studio as we bring you coverage from student journalists like my co-host Julie and from GVSU's newspaper, The Lanthorn.
A critical demographic factor in this election is voters under the age of 35, ensuring that students are informed, registered, and ready to cast their ballots. Organizations are working to inform on the voting process. I had the chance to learn more on how initiatives are powering a new generation of voters. As polls have evidently shown, young voters across the nation have been mobilizing with the help of organizations engaging and empowering them to ensure their voices are heard tonight. Diara Gangaja, a junior at East Kentwood High School, shares her experience on how she was encouraged by her teacher to pre-register with the assistance of the League of Women Voters ahead of her 18th birthday.
I first learned about them when they came to our AP Gov class, and essentially they just gave us a little presentation and explained registration and pre-registration to us, and kind of went through the whole process of how to vote, what information you need, that kind of thing. They explained it really well, they made it really simple for everybody, and they even had the physical forms for us, and if you did fill them out that day, they would take them to the clerk's office for you and you would be registered.
With numerous organizations working to encourage high school students to pre-register, initiatives like the Campus Vote Project ensure that students' enthusiasm leads to active participation on Election Day. Isabella Grunwald, a representative of the nonpartisan organization GVSU Votes, outlines the group's mission.
This semester, we were really focused on motivating student voices to get out and be heard, and they don't even have to go to the polls directly. They are able to come here, for example, for as long as they're Allendale residents, and they can vote in Kirkhoff.
The effort to increase student voices is especially crucial given that despite comprising 19% of the U.S. population, Latino and Hispanic voter registration continues to lag behind those of other racial and ethnic groups. Juana Perez, a Grand Valley State University student, pre-registered at 16 through her high school's attempt to increase registration. She emphasizes how the opportunity to cast a ballot is a privilege that should not be taken for granted.
As a Mexican American, my parents are from Mexico. I have friends who are from Mexico as well, and they don't have the privilege, they don't have the honor to vote as me and my siblings or other friends.
This election year, the impact of civic engagement is extremely clear. Every vote counts, and mobilizing the youth is key to making sure that every voice is heard. At Allendale, I'm Julie Islas.
Thanks, Julie. Not only are those under 35 making their mark by registering to vote, but they are also out making their voices heard. Reporter Nuha Hussein spoke with young members of the community that are making sure those in power hear their voice.
As election night unfolds, young activists are mobilizing for accountability. A variety of tools empower them to raise awareness of critical issues and demand change in real time, with social media as just one avenue for their voices. Dr. Perry, a veteran and educator who has dedicated years to preserving Native traditions and activism, highlights the importance of social media within youth in becoming politically informed.
Critical thinkers, because we have so much mass media out there that's trying to get them to think the way that particular person is putting that information out. They look at all sides of the story and then they make a decision. Instead of just, being influenced by social media, mass media, and all that, or what the majority thinks. That's how issues get dropped and issues lose momentum, is when that type of situation sets in.
Dr. Perry then discusses how youth voting is not only crucial, but also a form of activism, especially when enhanced by social media. Senior at East Kentwood High School, Simone Pennock understands the importance of youth voting and recalls what originally made her interested in politics.
Previous elections, I remember specifically sitting on the couch in my house, kind of just watching the polls on the news with my parents. Ever since then, I became even more interested in the political side of life and looking into what actually are the causes for these things that are commonly talked about.
In recent years, Pennock has used her passion for art and music to further her cause and what she stands for.
I see a lot of younger people actually going out and protesting for what they believe in. We've seen that throughout history. Usually it is the younger majority of the people that are protesting and are performing their ideas in a real life circumstance.
Pennock's insight reflects a global trend where young people are at the forefront of social movements, utilizing their voices and platforms to seek out against injustice. Danny Kalea, an organizer with Palestine Solidarity Grand Rapids, is a prime example of this.
the youth have been extremely inspiring. We've seen this past year countless encampments for Gaza, for Palestine, all not just across the nation, but across the world. You know, in universities like Oxford, but also local universities like Western Michigan, the University of Michigan, Michigan State University. So definitely the youth. This is an essential topic for the youth.
As election night unfolds, young activists are mobilizing for accountability, and their passion promises to reshape political engagement long after the polls close. At Allendale, I'm Nuha Hussein.
Thanks, Nua, and now joined in studio by Lantorn's editor-in-chief, Haley Hentz. Haley, what are you covering tonight?
So we're broadcasting to talk about the issues that are most important to voters in Michigan, as well as the general context surrounding casting a ballot in the state. While there are a variety of student organizations on campus that have been drumming up excitement surrounding voting, a vast amount of students frankly feel overwhelmed by this presidential election specifically. Some students feel very strongly about voting for former President Donald Trump or Vice President Kamala Harris, and others have expressed irritation with the two-party system, opting for third-party candidates or choosing not to cast their ballot at all. At Grand Valley, students were able to vote last week through early voting at our Student Center, and today, through GVSU Votes, a student-led voting initiative, students were able to be transported to off-campus polling locations to cast their ballot. Grand Valley State University's Student Senate has been working in tandem with GVSU Votes, and in our reporting, we've covered the efforts by Student Senate and its president, Quentin Proctor. Proctor believes that voting in both local and national elections is important because young voters have the potential to sway the results.
We've just been hearing about key issues that are important to young voters. For a deeper discussion of these issues, we now turn to a live panel discussion hosted by veteran reporter and GVSU professor Jeff Kelly Lowenstein.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here, and we're very happy to have here students from East Kentwood High School who took an advanced placement government course last year and will be eligible to vote in the 2028 presidential election. So here to share their thoughts are Daniela Tar, Nuha Hussein, and Owen Renwick. Welcome, and thanks to all of you. Daniela, let's start with you. The eyes of the nation and the world are on Michigan as potentially one of the most important battleground states. Can you tell us about how the run-up to this election this year has connected to what you've studied last year in your AP government class? And I know you mentioned you're taking an American political thought class this year. Tell us a bit about that, please.
So I definitely think there is a lot of things I've noticed. Like with today, I have learned in my AP government class a very big idea that was taught to me was voting efficacy. And to me, that is a big issue. And I think a lot of youth, a lot of people who are obviously 35 and younger, they definitely are starting to realize more that their vote does matter and their vote can impact how we actually move and how we grow as a country today. So I definitely think that is something that is really key in today. And obviously as a swing state, we want everyone to kind of have their ideas and have their voices heard and represented.
Well, no, thank you for that, Danielle. And moving on to you, Owen, building off of the point that Daniela just made, this election has seen allegations by both major parties of the other side being a threat to democracy. So as a future voter, and I know you're also a UN model UN delegate, what has been your experience and your thoughts about the tone of how this election has been conducted?
I think the tone of the election has been very aggressive, and originally going in, both candidates wanted to have a more peaceful Kamala when she was first elected, and Trump after his first assassination attempt. Both decided they wanted to make a more peaceful campaign, but throughout the period of the campaign, you've kind of been able to see more hate speech be able to be infused between both candidates.
And on that point, even with this aggressive campaign that Owen is describing after sort of a peaceful moment, a record turnout is expected in this election. And from your perspective, what are the issues that you think are driving people, young people like you, but also other people, to the polls for this hotly contested election?
Well, just as every other election, and even just in the world, there's always going to be issues going on.
It's just natural. It's always going to be there. And I mean, if we think about it now, specifically in this election, there's so many issues. There's so many issues. You know, bodily autonomy, war overseas. And I think that is to the question to why people are actually not voting, because they feel as if their voices are not being heard enough, and they don't agree with the certain policies that each party is, you know, saying they'll do or saying they will, you know, do for the public and stuff. So yeah.
No, a very important point, and echoes what Haley was talking about, where they are, on the one hand, feeling strong feelings for others, saying this doesn't represent me and don't want to be involved. Now, Daniela, obviously the presidential election getting a ton of attention, but outside of that race, what are some of the contests in Michigan that you think are most important to voters today?
Yeah, so I think definitely the Senate race. I think that is really big, especially because obviously Debbie Stepnow has decided to retire. I think finding a new candidate well, having a person to fill in her shoes is important, especially because it will impact us as a swing state. It will impact us with our political party in Congress, you know. So I definitely think that is another big priority to like focus on besides the presidential campaign.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Owen, are there certain races that you've been paying attention to besides obviously the Senate race? Debbie Stabenow in for multiple terms, but now hotly contested with Representative Slotkin and Rogers. Other ones that you might be watching?
I mean, for me, it's not as much the specific candidates as much the attempted passings of multiple school funding programs, because I feel like this is the most important to the local communities, and the effects of this funding could help students and the evolution of the community more than a specific candidate could.
Okay, no, very interesting. And Nua, when you're walking the halls of East Kentwood, you made a really significant point about people not feeling engaged. Are there certain issues that if they were addressed, you think students might be more likely to be excited about the political process? What is not being talked about?
I mean, politics are spoken about everywhere. You hear it everywhere. I mean, they're on ads everywhere. You're online. There's political ads everywhere. You're seeing the different parties going against each other and such. And I mean, I think politics is very active. And I specifically won't say that people are being, you know, are kind of shying away. They're shying away in a point where they don't feel as if they're being represented in a specific way, because they don't agree, or they don't like how certain people are taking actions in a way.
The American political thought that sounded like a fascinating, have there been aspects of that have resonated in terms of the build-up to the election as well, either in terms of getting people involved, or as Nua was saying, people not feeling engaged in that way?
Yeah, so obviously American political thought is kind of also known for We the People, which is like kind of like what we're all about. Yeah, so I definitely think it does impact kind of like my course, just because we are living in history right now, which is really kind of crazy to me, and so it obviously what happens right now does impact us, like for our generation, and yeah, like for example, like certain units will talk about what is happening right now. I know that in my unit, we talked about January 6th and how that really impacted kind of like how we saw certain things, and like even questioning, was that right? Like, are we able to even have like that uprising, you know, or can it even be called an uprising, you know? And like, do we have those rights, or was that completely uncalled for? And yeah.
And Owen, related to that, how do you see the level of engagement? Is the build up to the campaign, you know, you mentioned more local issues. What are people talking about in your classes, in your hallways? What are people, related to what Daniela was just saying?
I feel like the main topic that we're being discussed is just fear in general. And I think that is something that we need to work on.
Okay.
I think we need to make campaigns more positive rather than keep insisting negative ideas.
Okay, well, on that note, we'll wrap it up. Thank you very much to our students and future voters from East Kentwood High School in Kentwood here in West Michigan for your helpful insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff and panelists.
And while some people are excited about the upcoming election and what it brings, others are feeling anxiety or even a little bit of fear. Reporter Owen Renwick dove deeper into that.
With being only hours away from a winner being declared, anxiety for many across the country is rising. For Nehemiah Clay, a senior at East Kentwood High School, the anxiety stems from thinking about what his future could and could not entail.
I could have like one thing, somebody else gets in the office, I could get that one thing taken away from me, like being able to marry someone one day. That could get taken away from me like very fast, which I feel like that's what gives me a lot of anxiety, because I never know what's going to get taken from me.
Though election-related anxiety is still a growing topic, there are those who are trying to get help, such as May Lexi Zarita, who is helping students use art as an output for anxiety.
Can just be kind of challenging in American culture to genuinely have a space where you feel like you can express your views, and art, I think, is underutilized generally by students or American people as a way to kind of relieve that stress.
I spoke with Dr. Bodel, an associate professor at Grand Valley State University, believes one of the key ways to avoid election stress is empathizing with the people and their views around you.
Separate people from their perspectives. Remind yourself that even if I disagree with this person passionately on who they're voting for, that probably deep down they're really a good person.
If election anxiety is affecting you, Dr. Bodel recommends doing simple tasks to relieve anxiety, such as going on a walk, getting some exercise, or simply closing social media for the night.
Thanks, Owen. And now it's time to check back in with the Lanthorn and reporter Aaron Rutan. Aaron, what's going on?
In Michigan, there are certain issues of utmost relevance to many of the state's residents. Considering the city of Detroit's auto policy or auto industry, East Side voters are obviously very concerned with workers' rights at the state of associated labor policies. The United Auto Workers Union has endorsed Harris, and the Teamsters Union has refused to endorse either candidate. Michigan population also includes the country's largest concentration of Arab American voters. These voters are located primarily in the Detroit metropolitan area, specifically in the city of Dearborn, where 55% of their residents are Arab American. Many voters in Metro Detroit have expressed an interest in voting for the Green Party's Jill Stein, and what could steal a large number of votes from both major candidates, specifically Kamala Harris. One major contender Green Party voters have with Harris is her administration's financial support of Israel during the current humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And this concern is shared by a number of progressive students here at GVSU.
Thanks so much, Aaron.
Tonight, we are also gathered by a group of Grand Valley students to talk about what they think are the most important issues about this election. This discussion is hosted by Professor Richard Beazle from GVS School of Communication.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us for the special panel discussion on the 2024 election. My name is Richard Beazle. I'm the director of the School of Communications here at Grand Valley State University. I'm joined tonight with three of our undergraduate students, and to my far right is Landon, followed by Hannah and Alex. And Alex, I'd like to give you the first question. For many college students, this will be their first time voting in a presidential election. For others, this is certainly an historic moment. In one word, can you describe how you are feeling about voting for president in 2024?
I would say cautiously optimistic. According to polls, I feel like this race is going to be pretty tight, and the candidates couldn't be more different from each other.
And Hannah, what word or words come to your mind?
Yeah, so I would describe it as uncertain because, like Alex said, both are very different and both are very close and like their votes. So seeing how it ends up in a few days is very exciting.
Okay, great. And Landon?
I would say excited. You know, as Alex said, diverse candidates. As Hannah said, it's a close election, and I think this election is like the perfect opportunity to get my voice heard and my peers' voices heard.
Sure, and I think a lot of people are feeling similar kinds of things based on what you were saying about how you're feeling. I want to turn our attention a little bit to some of the issues, though. And so commentators often talk about generational differences when it comes to political, social, and cultural issues. We hear about global or national topics like the economy, abortion, climate change, and others. And so what issues are important to you? What are the things that you're thinking about? And I don't know if anybody wants to start us off.
Sure,
Alex?
I'll start off.
As an openly queer person, the passage of the Equality Act at a national level is very important to me, as well as reproductive freedom for women. I think those are my big two, as well as the economy.
I think women's rights, speaking as a woman myself, I want to make sure my rights are protected. And I know that's a very big issue that's been on my mind, and seeing how that ends up. And so making sure everything works out as it should be.
Landon?
I would say our economy, more specifically the housing market, sort of a housing crisis right now. I've had older siblings not able to get out of the house due to simply not being able to afford a home currently.
And so, Landon, I was wondering if maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that. I had a follow-up question about what issues you think are important to others, and what are you hearing your friends and family talking about? So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about some of those conversations you had, and then others, if you want to jump in, about what your family are talking about as being important for this election.
So yeah, I've heard from my friends about not being able to afford homes, and that's been a big deal. But from friends who are more of my age, I think the biggest concern I hear from them is like tuition prices. A lot of them are stuck in community college right now, and they can't afford tuition at a place like Grand Valley.
And Hannah, what are you hearing people
Yeah,
talking
kind of
about?
adding off of that, I think being able to afford things, so like the economy, so once we finish college, being able to move out and create our own lives, and being able to actually afford that is a really big issue, and to making sure we can do that.
I'd have to agree, as well as like price gouging at the grocery store. I think that is an issue that needs to be addressed.
Okay. And maybe instead of us talking about the sort of the national or the global issues, let's maybe talk a little bit more locally. And so I think thinking about our grocery store is one good way to go, getting us to think about what hits us every day, or what are the things that are kind of affecting us in our day-to-day lives. So thinking more about the state and local level, Michigan is often described as like a battleground state, a purple state, a swing state, and candidates often speak about or visit us during their campaigns. What issues do you think are most important to Michigan voters specifically? And I don't know, Hannah, do you maybe want to start with that one?
Yeah, so I think, like you said, with like the grocery stores, when visiting there, I always feel like, oh my gosh, that is so high for just a simple thing of the price. And so I feel it needs to be figured out and more realistic. And so really just figuring out the right solution to the economy would be really important.
And Alex?
I would say assistance with first-time home buyers is really important. I think that could really set people up for success.
Building off what Alex and Hannah said, definitely price gouging is a big problem right now, and you're not just seeing it in grocery stores. I've seen it at diners, I've seen it at grocery stores, of course, but I've even seen it at the car wash. I've seen it everywhere. It's just been going up. But also, as a Michigander, I feel like one collective problem we can all agree on is the road quality. I've had to make a lot of mechanic trips.
Sure, you're probably hitting some of the bumps in the road along the way, and yeah, I think a lot of us can relate to that. Did any of you engage in any election-related activities? Obviously, you're participating in this session, but did any of you or any of your friends or family participate in election-related activities, whether that's canvassing or some of the conversations that you might have had? And if so, what was that like? Anybody want to jump in on that one?
I personally haven't canvassed with an organization, but I've just been having really tough conversations with people of opposite political beliefs as me. And as tough as those may be, I feel like those conversations are good to have because they might not be hearing your point of view ever. So kind of can move the needle or not. Sometimes it's just having the conversation.
You're trying to find common ground with others who have differing opinions.
Correct.
Hannah, is a similar sort of thing? I saw you nodding.
Yeah, so similar to what he said, I feel like I haven't personally taken a part in anything extra besides voting, but like he said, like having tough conversations with others and hearing their point of view has been my main thing.
Landon, you get the last word.
Yeah, I would also have to agree with Alex and Hannah. I've seen it on social media. I've seen it at home. Like I said, those student organizations has been really big help.
Well, great. And I'd like to thank our panelists for joining us today, Landon, Hannah, and Alex. And I'd like to thank all of you at home for joining us as well. And so now we return you to live coverage of the 2024 election.
It looks like that is all the time we have for tonight. Thank you so much to Student News Live for providing us this platform this evening. On behalf of Julie, myself, hey, we thought our job was done, and all the student journalists who participated in tonight's streamcast, thank you and good night.